I don't know. Are you waving to say you're here, or are you trying to get your audio to work?
Still nothing.
Push your space bar.
Suzanne, are you there? Can you hear us?
I am here.
Okay, and are you alone in the room?
I am most certainly alone in the room.
Excellent.
Except for my dog.
Let the record note that John is here, and we will hopefully figure out his audio before. You were on audio before, weren't you, John?
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
So I stepped out of order, so I'll read my announcement into the record.
Okay.
If I may, Councilor Pierce is here.
Yes.
And he's alone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Nice.
The boxes kept moving, and I missed someone, and I missed you. All the boxes kept moving. I was trying to keep them straight. I apologize.
All right. So as chair of the Concord, New Hampshire Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are, A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by utilizing the Zoom platform and other electronic means. We're utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through clicking on the following website address: www.zoom.us/j/754076629, or by dialing the following phone number, 929-208-6099, and entering the password 754076629. For those calling in who want to provide public testimony, please dial *9 to alert the host that you want to speak. The host will unmute you during the public portion of the meeting. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public on how to access the meeting using the Zoom platform, and instructions are provided on the City of Concord's website at www.concordnh.gov/273/planning-board. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are any problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please call 603-568-8515 or send an email to planning@concordnh.gov. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes are to be taken at this meeting shall be done by roll call vote when each member states their presence. Also, please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which we missed, which is required under the right to know law. So with that, we'll kick off the meeting. We've done the roll call vote for members, so we will move right ahead to, do you need to do anything, Heather, as far as housekeeping for anybody that wasn't in the room? Or
No, I think you've got everybody.
Okay, so we'll move right into approval of the minutes. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the December 16th, 2020 Planning Board minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Councilor Pierce and seconded by Matt Hicks. All those in favor by roll call? Heather?
I apologize. Member Woodfin?
Aye.
Member Hicks?
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Councilor Pierce?
Aye.
Member Rosenberger?
Aye.
Member Fox?
Aye.
Member Smithmeyer? You're on mute, Suzanne, if you're trying to speak.
Sorry. Aye.
And Member Regan? It looks
Okay,
like John's still having trouble. Can you give us a thumbs up, John? Yes, he's giving us thumbs up for the minutes. Let the record reflect.
Okay, so quick meeting overview. I can't remember, Heather, where we left off on the agenda overview. 6F was coming out of consent. That was it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So all the other items that are on our agenda will be heard tonight. So we'll move right into item number 5, which is a determination of completeness component for 5A. If we could read that into the record.
CP Concord LLC requests major site plan approval for the construction of a new restaurant and drive-through facility with associated site improvements at 310 Loudon Road in the Gateway Performance District. Staff does recommend that it be determined complete and not a development of regional impact, and set the public hearing for February 17th.
Okay, so there is a determination of completeness. It is not a development of regional impact. Would someone like to make a motion to find the application complete and open the public hearing or set the public hearing for the February 17th, 2021 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Suzanne Smith-Meyer and seconded by David Fox. All those in favor by roll call?
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Fox,
Aye.
Member Hicks,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Smith-Meyer,
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
and it looks like Member Reagan has signed off, probably in an attempt to fix his technical problems.
Okay, we'll roundly chastise him when he comes back on, everybody. So we will move on from that to item 6 in our agenda tonight, which is the design review applications by consent. For those listening in the audience, if you have a question regarding items 6A, B, C, D, or E that are on our agenda, those items will all be heard by consent, which means we'll be voting on them in their entirety as they're submitted with application or with recommendations by architectural design review taken into account. So if you have a question regarding any of those applications, make yourself known to the host now. Otherwise, we will look to the board to see if anyone member of the board has any of the items other than 6F if it's on your agenda, which has already been pulled from consent. Does any member of the board wish to pull off 6A, B, C, D, or E from the consent agenda? No? Any member of the audience, Heather?
Nope.
Okay, so we will make a motion. We will take a motion to review these applications by consent for 6A, B, C, D, and E with architectural design review recommendations. If someone would like to make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Suzanne Smith-Meyer and seconded by David Fox. All those in favor by roll call?
I just want to clarify, I think you misspoke and said review the applications, but I think you meant approve the application.
Approve the application.
Just so the
Sorry.
record reflects that.
Sorry. Yes.
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Fox,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Hicks,
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Member Smith-Meyer,
Aye.
and we have been rejoined by Member Regan. We are doing by consent approval of ADR recommendations.
Aye.
And
Sorry about that,
yay,
everybody.
we got him in there.
Got them in there. Thank you, John. Okay, so those applications have been approved, and we will move on to 6F in our agenda, which is Hodges Development Corp. If we could read that into the record.
Sure. Hodges Development Corp. On behalf of Rick Smith requests ADR approval for the installation of a new externally illuminated wall sign at 211 Loudon Road in the Gateway Performance District. ADR had recommended that item be tabled, and the applicant indicated that they were amenable to that.
Okay, so we have a recommendation to table the application. Would someone like to make a motion to table this application? Do we have a date? Do we want to table it till February or just table it indefinitely, Heather?
You can, these aren't noticed in the same way
Okay.
butters are noticed, so you
Okay.
can just table it to no
We'll
date
just
certain.
table it. Someone like to make a motion to table item
So moved.
6F?
So moved.
Motion was made by Councilor Pierce. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member
Santa Cruz.
Sorry, I don't recognize your voice yet, Jeff.
That's all right.
All those in favor by roll call?
I apologize. Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Fox,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Hicks,
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Member Regan,
Aye.
Member Smith-Meyer.
Aye.
Great, so that item passes. We'll move on to our public hearing section of our agenda tonight, which is one item in the agenda, item 7A, if we could read that into the record.
Jarbel Realty LLC requests major site plan approval for conversion of an existing non-residential structure to a 5-unit residential and commercial use at 189 North Main Street in the Urban Commercial District. This was determined complete last month, not a development of regional impact, and staff does recommend to open the public hearing.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing. We'll welcome the applicant to the table if they are here.
Yes, we
And
have
if-
Ben Kelly, and I will allow, I think you're allowed to speak. Do you want me to promote you to panelist, Ben, so you can use your video?
hang on before we do that.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to
Okay.
get a quick staff update before we move
Sure.
to the applicant.
Sure.
So who says this for staff?
Beth?
Hey, Beth, could you give us a quick update on this?
Sure. This is a relatively simple project. They're converting a existing building. They're creating 5 apartment units, which is the triggers the requirement for the major site plan. They are not required to do any site work except for the installation of a new water line, which they'll be working with an engineer once they design their fire suppression system. So that's one of the conditions of the building permit, is for them to provide that information to us. They requested waivers to not submit grading, erosion control, or landscape plan. Staff does support those since they aren't doing any exterior work, and there's existing mature vegetation in the parking lot, which gives us sufficient shade coverage. So we're not, there's no additional trees required to cover that parking lot. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
Great. Well, we will welcome Mr. Kelly to the table. Mr. Kelly, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you all for volunteering and hearing this application this evening.
Great. Well, let's get right into it. If you can, just give us a quick overview of the project. For those of you that don't know, this is the beautiful twin Victorian that used to be Concord Obstetrics and Gynecology on North Main Street. Since they've moved up to the hospital, I believe Mr. Kelly owns the building and has been looking for somebody to take over for a while. So this sounds like a great project. As long as you keep all that detail inside and that beautiful staircase and all the things that make it wonderful. So
Exactly.
great.
Yeah, so I've owned it since 2017. Obviously, I operated as the landlord with Concord Hospital and there as a tenant. They, as you said, recently moved out. So I marketed it for sale. There was a couple projects that and buyers that had come forth, but they were very, they were small micro apartments. I just didn't like the concept, given the building and the history of the building. So I decided just to go ahead and develop it myself. So I'm keeping the ground floor and the lower level as office space. There's going to be 2 to 3 tenants consisting of that commercial tenant consisting of the ground floor and the lower level. And then on the upper floors, the second and third floors, those will be converted to apartments. They're going to be market rate apartments in the 650 range, square foot range, with the third floor being a large 2-bedroom unit. And I don't recall the exact square footage off the top of my head, but it's probably a 850, 900 square foot unit. The building's going to have laundry on site. There's not a lot changing, as Beth mentioned, to the site itself from the exterior. We have 32 parking spaces. Based on the mixed use of residential and commercial, zoning requires, or code requires 25 spaces. So it really works nice with the offsetting uses to not only meet the requirement, but also to have, some additional overflow parking there. And it is a historic building, as Chairman mentioned. So we are working with Joe Spain as the general contractor to preserve all of that. Was there a question? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. So yeah, we're working to preserve that. Everything from the soffit and the trim, you mentioned the stairways, those are all being preserved. The windows, we are doing new storm windows, replacing it with a Harvey product, but the windows will stay. It's a really cool building. It was originally built, from my understanding, as a 2-family for 2 sisters who lived there for quite some time. So just, paying attention to the history of it and bringing it back to what it is or what it was, and looking forward to developing it. Because it's a change of use from Concord OBGYN to mixed use with the residential, I'm here to obviously seek approval for that. And I don't know how much detail you guys want me to go into. Happy to answer any questions. I know I left some stuff out, but happy to answer any questions you might have on the plans or the site or anything.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the board? Any member of the board have any questions regarding this application? Heather, any?
I do,
Jeff?
actually.
Just, I noticed in your application it stated that you had 10 double space parking, but looking at the site plan, your dumpster is now taking up one of those spaces. And the 2 spaces closest to the road are actually shorter and may not really function as double parking. And I'm just curious how those tandem spaces are going to work. Are they going to be relegated to the commercial use so that it's commercial, or is it residential, or is it first come, first serve? And what happens when 2 cars are parked there and kind of have a conflict?
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Or member Santa Cruz. So yeah, the tandem, when we counted, obviously we didn't double count those spaces. So Concord did that, Concord Hospital did that because they knew staff would be in and they could double park. I think honestly, we'll just, look at restriping it when we, once the lot's seal coated and we're done with the project. Most likely we'll just not have them as double spaces because I think it could prevent, potentially cause issues with someone blocking someone else in. So I think we'll either be restriped in a way that just makes it a single space and you have a wider drive lane. But if there's an opportunity to restripe it so that we, it yields more spaces, I will do that as well. And we just put the dumpster there. That's where it is now. But again, given the site, and I think there's some inefficiencies, we may try and relocate that so it's not, taking up a parking space. But yeah, I shared that concern of leaving as a double space and thinking about someone getting blocked in. And most likely we'll have the visitor parking back there because again, there's, I think 25 required and we're in that 31, 32, depending on this dumpster. So we'll probably put the visitors back there, leaving front accessible for visitors or residents and employees, and just have those be first come, first serve.
Okay, so you say there's 32 parking spaces. When I count, if I don't double count them, I'm not getting to 32 unless I'm missing something. I just want to make sure that the parking's not going to spill out and be on the side streets. Since it's a 2-hour parking, but it is a tight road. If we're looking to redo it, and if there's any opportunity to make sure we can park on site. And then I noticed that a lot of the spaces are striped. Currently is 14 feet, which falls below the 15-foot at least required for a compact space. So if you are looking to seal coat and restripe, I would highly recommend, if it's possible, to maybe adjust those to maybe kind of adjust the drive aisles and make it kind of understood where the cars, are parked and where the drive aisle is. That would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, a lot of it goes back to it just not being striped effectively. But that certainly will be adjusted. And I think I'm just counting here. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask. But I think part of it came from Concord OBGYN just ad hoc a lot of spaces that maybe aren't on the survey but are physically used as such, as spaces at the site currently. So, but I know we reviewed it and identified a number of, areas that we thought were inefficient that you could get more out of it than what it is currently. Yeah,
I still think, leave it if you don't double count. I just want to make sure we're not falling into a false sense of security that there's 32 when indeed, it might be a little bit less than that when you start kind of tweaking these corners that aren't double or, whatnot. That's all.
Yep. Nope. Thank you. Understood.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Heather, any member of the audience have any questions?
No.
Nope. Okay, so let's move on to our approval piece here. We've got in your packet, you've got the item 2.1 to grant the following waivers for the site plan regulations utilizing criteria of RSA 674-44-1, which states that strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant. We have applications for waivers for 1602.12 to not submit a grading and drainage plan since no site work is proposed. Section 1602.13 to not submit an erosion control plan since no site work is planned. And 1602.15 and 2203 to not submit a landscape plan since landscaping requirements are not triggered and the existing mature trees is sufficient to meet requirements. Someone like to make a motion to grant those waivers as so eloquently outlined by yours truly. If someone would like to make a motion to grant those 3 waivers.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Suzanne, seconded by Council Pierce. All those in favor by roll call?
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Fox,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Hicks.
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Member Regan,
Aye.
Member Smithmeyer.
Aye.
Okay, and can I take 2.2 and 2.3 together, grant ADR approval and to grant major site plan approval?
You should do them as separate motions, but
Okay.
did you close the public hearing? Because I missed it. I just want to make sure.
I don't.
No,
think
it
I
needs
did.
to be closed.
No, so we'll close the public hearing.
And can you also, there was a revised report, for those of you that didn't see the new revised report, the wrong address was in the original report. So I just want to make sure that when you're voting on 2.3, that it's based on the revised report with the correct address.
51
should-
Antrim Avenue, that's not it?
No.
What is it, 189 North Main?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's do 2.2 first, which is to grant ADR approval with the condition that any colors chosen for exterior components that differ from the existing color scheme, along with any material changes such as storm windows, be submitted to staff for the record. Would someone like to make a motion to grant ADR approval? Grant ADR approval, I guess that
So
is?
moved.
Suzanne?
Second.
Motion is made by Suzanne, seconded by Councilor Pierce. All those in favor by roll call?
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Fox,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Hicks.
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Member Regan,
Aye.
Member Smithmeyer.
Aye.
Okay, and then we've got 2.3 is to grant major site plan approval for the proposed 15,300. Is that right, Beth? 15,300?
Nope. Nope.
So tell me what I should be writing there.
It is great major site plan approval for the proposed conversion of a medical office building to professional offices on the first floor and 5 apartment units above at 189 North Main Street, subject to the following precedent and subsequent conditions noted below. And then those are all correct.
Those are all correct. So those are precedent conditions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and subsequent conditions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Would someone like to make a motion to grant that major site plan approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Suzanne, seconded by David Fox. All those in favor by roll call?
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Member Fox,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Hicks,
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Member Regan,
Aye.
Member Smithmeyer.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, and that project is all set, ready to go. Mr. Kelly, enjoy it, have fun,
Thank
Good
you
luck.
all for your time. I appreciate it.
have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, that closes up our public hearing section of the meeting and moves us on to other business.
Yeah.
Let's read item 8 into the agenda.
So we've got the annual review of the impact fee inflationary rates. So as many of you may recall, we have a statutory requirement in accordance with our, well, it's actually a zoning ordinance requirement to provide you with annual rates, inflationary rates, and for the impact fees. So normally every year we tell you what the inflationary rate is for the recreation, the transportation, and the school impact fees using industry standard documents that tell us what the inflation is from year to year. You haven't recommended any of those increases. Well, of course, we don't have the school impact fees now, but you have not recommended any of those increases over the past 4 or 5 years for various reasons. This year, because of COVID and because of the economic situation, we have not recommended the increase. So we're giving you the information. I believe we drafted the ordinance showing the increase, but we're not actually recommending the increase at this time. So we are sort of handing it over to you to let us know if you would like to do the increase. We will go back and notice a public hearing for that and send it to council that you recommended the increase.
Okay, so we can just do a little quick straw poll and see if anybody is interested in raising the impact fees or increasing the impact fees. Just make yourself known if you would like to see an increase, and we can move from there. If not, we can unanimously tell them that we are not in favor of impact fee increases.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes, sir.
happy to make a motion to leave them as is.
Okay, we'll put you on the record as making that motion. Motion.
I would second that.
Motion was seconded by Mr. Hicks first before we got you, David. Any discussion, any opposition to that we should know?
I just have a question. Being the slightly newer person on the board, how long has it been since an increase is put in, and how much longer and how far behind are we going to get? Is it reasonable to put some sort of a modest increase, maybe not on the residential portion, but or does it have to go on everything equally? It's just, I don't want to get so far behind current construction costs that at some point, we're suddenly going to have to consider whether we do a large increase in the future, which is suddenly going to be a shock to developers and whatnot.
Yeah, we've actually decreased them as opposed to increase them. So I think the last times, I don't know when the last time is we increased it. I know we removed impact fees just a few years ago, Heather. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, Sam probably can tell you right off.
Yeah. In 2015, the transportation facility impact fee was increased, and in 2014 was the last time that the recreation facility impact fee was increased.
I can't hear you, Sam.
Can anybody else hear me?
You're just really quiet.
It's doing that thing again. 2015 and
That's better.
2014.
Thank you.
So to Jeff's point, are we falling behind, Heather, as far as, is there a budgetary item that we're going to have to make up eventually, or are we just going to move along and not make those changes? And I echo his thought. I don't want to all of a sudden see a 10% increase because we haven't done one in 10 years.
Yeah, I think that those years aren't really that long ago. The city council granted or approved an automatic waiver for non-residential impact fees. So we actually currently have no non-residential impact fees at this time. We've only got residential impact fees. We've got recreation and transportation. The recreation impact fees, they're valuable because they're helping to pay off the community center investment that was made recently. And the transportation impact fees, they get used up every year. And they to some degree, they supplement what is in the CIP. And for projects that are, 100%, they all go to projects that are in the CIP. But the city is not 100%, like the whole budget for a project isn't necessarily impact fees. So even if they did sort of get behind, quote unquote, the whatever the difference would be in some other grant or bond or funding from the city. So I think it's just has to do with development and what's going on with when the market starts really going crazy. I think it would be time to reevaluate if we're going to continue waiving the impact fees. So that's why staff has recommended it every single year up until this year. This is the first year that we have not recommended it because of the economic situation in COVID.
Okay. All right, so we have, I believe, a motion on the table from Councilor Pierce, and I can't remember who seconded that motion. Was it Matt? It was seconded by Matt. So let's take a vote, if we could do by roll call vote.
Chairman Woodfin?
Aye.
Member Hicks?
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Councilor Pierce?
Aye.
Member Rosenberger?
Aye.
Member Fox?
Aye.
Member Smithmeyer?
Aye.
Member Regan?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next item, which is item 9, which is a Q&A with Code Studio regarding design standards. So give us an update, Heather, on what we're going to be doing.
So I have Lee Einsweiler with Code Studio on call, and there he is. Welcome, Lee. Thought I'd make use of this video option that we have now, and he can show up to our planning board meetings. So I invited Lee here because for the last few months, we've had conversations about design standards. And the board was asking a lot of questions, and I tried to answer them, and I got the sense that they wanted to, a little bit more of a, to hear from Lee, basically. So I'll just give a short summary of of where we're at and what we have in the ordinance now, like what the last thing was that we put in the draft. And then you can ask Lee questions, or Lee can start out maybe addressing some of the concerns that you've expressed. So just in a nutshell, we took out the window glazing requirement. We kept in the proposal for the front door with a CUP. So with a conditional use permit, you can alter the location of your front door by basically going to the planning board. Or I think actually, no, we were going to do it by architectural design review. So you don't even have to get a CUP. It's just going to the design review board, and then they can make a recommendation to planning board. And then just the same way that all other design review applications go, the board would ultimately say, hey, yeah, we think this is fine, or not. Or no, this isn't a good use of this, of this alternative. Then with the garages, we said, yes, you have a garage facing the street. Your garage has to be 6 feet back from the facade of the building. So those essentially what we ended up with in the proposed ordinance. And so I think towards the end, what I was hearing was some of the greatest concern or questions were, why did we choose the 6 feet number? And should it be something different? So at that point, I'll turn it over to you, Lee.
I'm not certain I have anything brilliant to add, but the fundamental questions are typically, have you used this anywhere? Does this really work? Is it really necessary? Those are sort of the kinds of questions I would anticipate. Yes, we've used it before in a number of settings, and it's in a lot of other people's ordinances for the same reason. Let's just take the garage first, especially. Many people have objected to the flat plane, of the front of a house. And one of the easiest ways to get at that is to step that garage door back. It is a dominant feature when it's a 2-car garage, for example, and it is street facing. And by pushing it back that 6 feet, you make it a little less dominant, give some articulation to the front of the building. It is really nothing more than that. There's nothing absolute about it in any way. The beauty of 6 feet, one beauty of it is you cannot really park in it. So depending on what the front yard dimension is, it's not going to generate parking, for example, that runs across the sidewalk, which is something that we don't want. The alternative to something like 6 feet is to pull it all the way back to make sure that you can park in that driveway in the front yard area. So it would have to be pulled even further back in that particular condition. But there's no reason that 6 feet isn't functional from an urban design perspective. And numbers often thrown out are 4 feet and 8 feet as an alternative to this. The principal reason being it's half a sheet of plywood and a full sheet of plywood, or half a sheet of siding or whatever that you would typically get. So it's a module, if you will, in construction. So the 6 feet is a reasonably common number. It's not exactly one of those module numbers, but it's somewhere in between. You could clearly set your garage back 8 feet. You would not be able to set it back only 4 feet. The loss of the
Hang on, Lee. I just want to, before we move on to that, I just got 2 hands up, so I wanted to see if Councilor Pierce or Suzanne had questions. Earl?
Thank you. Lee, with the articulation facade of the building, why not bring the garage a maximum of 6 feet forward? Doesn't it make the same?
It does articulate the building, but then it leaves, rather than the door and the front windows of the building, it leaves those blank garage doors as kind of the dominant facade. By pulling it forward, it would be the dominant thing that you would see and feel from the street edge. So most typically it is pushed back. The only time that we really see a garage forward design is when it's turned sideways and it's actually a carriage court, one of those drive areas where, it's kind of in front of the house and you park the cars there. that is only typically in a setting where you have a permissive setback and they actually move the house back, leave the garage forward at the line the house would normally be at, but move the main house back and then put that court space in. So it's a large lot kind of a design to have a garage forward, in which case, you know, a 2 or 3 car garage is typically on a quite large house, and it's not quite so dominant, and it's not all the way up at the street, which in many cases your front setbacks are somewhat nominal. In the case of our new 7.5 district, it's just 15 feet from the street. So that having that garage come 6 feet forward of the house might be considered a bit problematic from an urban design perspective.
Good, Earl?
Thank you.
Okay, I got Suzanne Smithmeyer next, and then David, I got your hand too.
Thank you.
So I have one question. What would happen if someone had their garage forward, but there was a front porch that came off the house and then tied into the garage so that it was really more of the same face?
Yeah, elements like that would help a lot in regard to the urban design, which is why I think we were open to allowing alternatives through design review. You'd want to see that, right? You'd want someone to have looked at that design and said, yeah, okay, yeah, that's not what we originally were thinking of, but it works for us. So that is an option, the way we have set the ordinance up to work. It would come through you, and there could be a public conversation about it, of course. So that is a reasonable idea.
And then my other thought was, because after we've been discussing that, I look at everything and I look at it like, is this really horrible? Or is like, there are 2 new little houses being built a block or so away from me, and the garages are very forward. But the style, I don't know what it will really look like, and it's not, they're next to each other, but I guess if we were to really think it was so important to have them offset going back, could we not just say they can't be forward? They just have to be back. So rather than, I mean, would it be horrible if they were 4 feet back? As long as they weren't predominantly forward, would it be a mistake to say they can't be forward? And then just have them be set back?
I think let's say anything under 2 feet would feel like it was in the same plane as the front of the house, and that is certainly not the desire. You know,
so I guess that's what I'm.
You know, would 4 feet be an okay number? Yes, it would probably achieve the objective. Does 6 feet help the look a little more? Yes. I mean, that's about as confident as we can feel about these numbers. We could probably dredge up some pictures somewhere to share with you. I haven't been running around Concord's neighborhoods measuring garage because many of your neighborhoods don't have garages, or they're set back successfully already. I don't have anything immediately to share with you to discuss that. I think the shallowest that most people would consider a meaningful articulation would be more like 4 feet.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same number. And I think when you brought up the issue of like 2 and 3 car garages, that's monumental. And so that makes much more of a difference than a single car garage.
No doubt. And even with a 2-car garage, splitting it into 2 single doors makes a substantial difference, right? It feels nowhere near as monolithic when there's a little bit of detailing in between the doors. There's some trim, there's that little bit of in and out. So in many cases where you would allow a 2-car garage in that setting, you would ask for it to be built with 2 single doors. It's a little more expensive. It might require 2 garage door openers. You know, it would be different, but it has a much better look and feel. You could certainly consider a different standard, a different depth for a 2-car garage versus a single door.
Thank you.
Okay, David?
This is addressed to Lee. One of the things that I thought of was that depending on the depth of the setback from the garage from the fascia of the house, on some of the smaller front yard lots, if you and I don't cast aspersion, but if you drive a land barge like a Suburban or something, and you can't pull into your driveway and not obstruct the sidewalk, could that be part of the determination for the setback of the garage?
Absolutely. I don't think we should ever have a space on which you could park a car and get the back end in off the street.
Or the sidewalk. Or the sidewalk.
Well, I think if there were no sidewalk, it would be okay if the back end of the car, of even the Suburban, ended up out at the street edge. That would be barely okay. But yes, I don't think the parking space should never be allowed to obstruct the sidewalk. Now, you've got that condition today just because you have lots of old conditions that, you know, have been sort of made to work over the years. But certainly nobody should be building that new.
Okay. Have you had difficulty at all in your experience where you've had to come back and say, you know, if you'd set your garage back a little bit further, you wouldn't have blocked the sidewalk, or you're sitting in the street?
We could in the rules about measuring that setback, we could ensure that it's not only, let's take Ms. Smithmeyer's example, it's not only 4 feet back, but it's also at least 18 feet back from the back of sidewalk, for example. So that you would have one adequate outdoor parking space outside the door, and then the other inside. That would not apply to an alley. That would not apply internally to a drive. You know, it would only be applying along those front street edges.
Okay, thank you.
I got, Suzanne, did you have your hand up still, or is that, I see your button on there? Nope, there it goes. So Matt?
So I was just, we have an ordinance against blocking sidewalks now. So so is there a reason to write that in if there's already an ordinance that you can't block the sidewalk? I know because I've been ticketed for it.
Yes, frankly, you know, we don't want to set you up for getting ticketed. I'm not certain that people would make the connection between the two. And for example, let's say the space is, you know, 16 feet long and everything's been just fine while you drove that Honda. And then, you know, all of a sudden you did get the Suburban or the, you know, King Cab F-150 or whatever, and now you're hanging out. So I do think it's worthwhile putting it in there. I think it's likely that it's rare to be used because most people would be trying to create that usable space in front of the house. You know, most people want a decent parking space. So unless you had some really, you know, significant small lot of some sort, you're just going to back that up far enough that you have a decent space there, I think.
Go ahead, Matt.
I just have one more question. I don't want to get mired in this because we're not moving in this direction, but I'm just curious about how many communities you work with that don't allow or that require garages to be set behind the house or under the house. How common is that?
So actually in many of our ordinances now, certainly in greenfield settings, but often in older settings where garages were not part of the original framework, you would not be allowed to face a garage door to the street at all. You could from the from, you know, the rear yard. You can have a drive past the house, and there could be one in the rear yard, but you would not be able to have one in the front. So that's probably the most common that we see. This is a sort of hybrid approach because you guys do have tough winter weather, and you know, you need that space, and people seem to feel okay with the garage, but we would always in that condition be asking it to be set back from the front. So in newly drafted ordinances, you would see that in frankly all of our work in the initial draft. Whether it gets adopted in the final draft is of course a much more political question.
So I'm not going to propose that to the board, but I still like that idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Lee, how, you might have mentioned it before, and I don't know if I caught it or not, but you just mentioned the front-facing garage doors facing that main right. So if you had the front plane elevation with the side of the garage, and then the driveway came up the side, and then you turn into the garage, is that going to be permissible without any change or without any exceptions?
Yes, as long as the house had, you know, was the house would be set back behind the setback, and there is no requirement in these districts to pull up to any given line. In your commercial districts, there will be, right? The building needs to come to a particular line that you're trying to create along the commercial streets, but not true in residential. If people have enough land area to push the building back, they would be allowed to push the building back. So whether that could count as your required parking spaces, that court that we're talking about out front, normally it would not count as your parking spaces. But as we all know, people would park in it overnight in front of their house.
Okay.
That's a matter of choice. It's not expressly handled in the rules that are in the code right this minute. It theoretically would be allowed.
Okay. Heather, I saw your hand go up. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that in most of in all of the districts where the lots are larger, where you might want to put the garage, or you might want to build a new house with the garage next to the house, the setbacks are already high enough that you would never have the problem of your garage being close enough that your car would back into the street. It's the inner closer in districts. Right now we call RD, R8, RD, RN districts that have only like 15-foot setbacks.
Right.
But most of those lots are too small to put a garage next to the house anyway. So I think that what we're talking about with the back end of the garage or back end of the car blocking the sidewalk is mostly occurring in existing situations, and is not really likely to occur in a new situation, because in a new build situation, the garage would not be close enough to the street.
Earl, I got your hand up next.
Thanks. Just to follow up to your question, Mr. Chairman. You talked about a new build, garage under on the side. So the cars would come in and take a 90-degree turn and go into the garage. What about if you're on a small lot and you don't have the setback? What's envisioned for driving up the driveway and going to the garage under, which is in the front?
Are you talking about tucking it where you had enough terrain you could actually tuck it under the house?
I like a split.
Well, yeah. Let's say you're a raised ranch or a colonial, and you now come in and you go 90 degrees, but that doesn't fit on your lot, and you want to drive straight in. You're going to be in the same portion of the house, but now the garage doors face the street.
Mm-hmm. That would have to come through for alternative review. And,
okay.
You know, if fundamentally the condition of your site was such that there's not another option to provide that parking meaningfully and get the size house and the design that you'd like, that would be a topic for discussion, and presumptively, you know, an alternative design would be approved.
So just a quick follow-up. So what you're saying is all these proposed new rules and guidelines, would the builder, the resident would have an opportunity to go to ADR and apply for a conditional use permit?
Not all of them, but both the street-facing door and the garage standards.
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
So
thank you.
some are explicitly allowed that path. The others would have to go through a more formal variance process and show hardship.
Like a well-designed split level with, it's going to be a garage down under, but the way the topography works, it's a beautiful looking house with maybe a half circle drive or something like that. Again, you just come in, make your case, you move on and get it approved. Okay.
Yes.
I still got Suzanne hand up. I don't know if Suzanne.
I put it down and I put
Okay.
it back up again.
Okay, good. Well, I didn't see it before, so I apologize. I missed you.
Oh,
I
that's
took
okay.
Earl first.
No,
but go right ahead. Yep.
So I have two thoughts. I have to question for maybe Heather. What were the zoning areas that specifically this addresses? Downtown?
Yep, I think when we added in the provision that you could have flexibility if you go through design review, we expanded it to include basically everything that's not RO, because the places where some things that you might not want to reproduce, where they're most likely to occur, is in the R20 district, where you've got land where you could build new subdivisions. So that's exactly where we would want to be able to say, hey, pick a model house that's not just garage. So so it's right now it's applied to just everything that's not in the outside the urban growth boundary or in the RO district.
So whatever we decide in the report or the recommendations, will there be I think it's really important to have documented examples. Heather, I've been doing a little bit of research online and found one place I sent to Heather, and of course it would be Aspen, Colorado.
Guys with a high regulatory tolerance.
You're not kidding, and that didn't surprise me. But what I thought was interesting is not only did they have these expectations because they can, and there's obviously a lot of control, but in their regulations, they had examples. They said, so this is what we want and this is why. Because I think one of the pushbacks would be, in this part of the United States is like, I can do whatever I want. Now, the two houses that are not far from me, the garages that they're building, and I know the builder, I'm going to ask them so why did you decide to do that? The garage is very much forward, but they're literally little small, retirement, downsizing kind of houses. And, they're not fully built out, but in that case, I don't think it really matters as much. I think it really matters in some of the more developed and characteristic neighborhoods where someone might tear something down. Honestly, my concern more is like demolition rather than renovation. So I think that as we move forward, as long as that we can have examples to present to the community, is like, this is why we want it, like examples of this. And even if it ends up being 4 feet, at least it's not 4 feet forward.
So Heather and I have discussed this issue, and one of the challenges is, of course, that most development of just one house on one lot is allowed to move forward just through the building permit process. And so we often hear from attorneys that they want clear, concise language in that setting where the approval is not going to be discretionary. In a discretionary approval model, which I would guess maybe even a single family house is in Aspen because they care that much, In a discretionary model, you can use pictures, you can use softer language about should and encourage and all those kinds of things. We have talked internally about whether something as simple as, photographs of a number of good, recent things that have been built would help those conversations. Because I agree with you, some of that is sometimes simply a conversation with the applicant, can have all the impact in the world. We did go back and add photographs to the district pages. They are all local except one, I believe, which is a new district anyway that doesn't exist today. We're of course open to improving those photographs if people have recommendations to replace them with. So we are trying to get to a more visual discussion of these issues so that people can understand them better. We do not at present in the single family districts have any of that softer language that would go with something more like design guidelines.
And I think like just what you said was like, if you have a 3-car garage, that's like your house, a house for your cars, which is probably a bigger profile than your house. I totally agree that that's a little, that's definitely not what you want, but I think that we walk this very fine line of aesthetics. And so if we can kind of make it clear that, that it's a strong suggestion for these reasons, and they're basically all aesthetics and how we want the community to look, but with that flexibility. I mean, 4 is better than 2, but as long as we can give them the reason why 6 is better than 4, maybe it's better to just say it has to be at least 4 or something. So I appreciate your input.
So one thing that is commonly done, and it is more focused on greenfields development, is to use a percentage of the width of the house so that the street facing width of the house, you get a third or no more than half or whatever can be garage doors. The problem in Concord is that you have many narrow lots. And infill lots that become available might be extremely challenging to fit houses on. That's why they haven't been used to date. So that kind of a standard would probably cause a fair amount of variances and a lot of consternation in the process. So we have stuck with this simpler approach. It doesn't ban the 3-car garage in any way right this minute, but it should help to tame it. One key thing, and I don't know if any of you noticed this, there is a companion standard in regard to parking on those district pages that sets the driveway width within the parking setback area. So the driveway width is kept down to a single lane. So if you have a 3-car garage, you are necking that back down to a single entrance. So in order to do that successfully and really get your Suburban in or whatever else, you
have to set it back.
You pretty much have to set it back. So if we hold to that standard as well, which is about pedestrians being able to cross the sidewalk across your driveway feeling safe, we should be constrained the most egregious cases, at least, of garage doors facing the street.
Great. Jeff?
Yeah, one thing you said that kind of resonated with me, you said a single family house lot development doesn't have to go through the process and go directly to building. So how does any of this apply if they just go get a building permit? They can, do these ordinances still going to apply?
Yes,
if they're
these
just
rules
going?
apply to every building permit for a single family house. They
Okay,
are
so-
just applied by without necessarily having the help of the planning staff. Help me out here, Heather.
No.
Who looks at what?
So if the ordinance, the ordinance will say this is required, similar to right now our ordinance says a parking space has to be this by this. So even if you're doing a single family home, you have to provide a parking space that is X by X feet. So it'll be exactly like that. We already have stuff in our ordinance that applies to single family homes. It's just those are standards that people don't normally have to, think about or get variances for. So yeah, if you want to come in, if it's a single family home, the code is going to know, like right now, if you go in for a building permit, they're going to look to see, do you meet the setbacks? Do you, are you out of whatever you're not supposed to be in, whatever. And that'll be a thing that they check. Do you have a garage? Is it set 6 feet back? No. Oh, talk to planning for the design review.
Okay, I just want to make sure we don't end up with a loophole where something keeps sliding through and we're back here in a year trying to fix it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if it's not a single family home, this was something the code asked, if it's a larger development, well, larger developments always give us elevations anyway. They're required to give us elevations as part of their packet. And so we would look at the model that they're proposing for their development. And we've had that conversation at that time on the front end as part of the site plan approval. So code was like, well, what if we've got 40 houses in the new development? Are all 40 houses going to have to go through design review? No, they wouldn't. The whole project would get approved. We'd have 3 or 4 different models of the houses that they're proposing, and it would go through the planning board the same way it always does. And if it was one of those alternative models, that is no different for them at all, because they're already going to have to go through architectural design review for their site plans. So all of those 40 houses would be approved, and they would get their building permits regularly, and it would be all fine.
But one house on an existing lot goes straight to the code and the building permit review staff.
Yeah.
Whereas the subdivision and other things come all the way on up through you guys.
Right.
Okay, great.
The other thing I wanted to point out is that even if every single application was approved for design review, it's still valuable if there's like one where everybody's like, oh no, geez, no, we don't want that, or that's like those other ugly ones, we don't want any more of those. No, we're not going to approve that one. That's how design review works now. If you think about it, like 90% of the stuff that comes through design review gets approved. There might be tweaks here and there, but it's very rare that when stuff comes through design review that you all deny it. It's just, it gives you the opportunity to look at something that may not match the model that we're trying to encourage or promote.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else, Lee, you want to bring up or mention?
I just wanted to touch on the transparency question. We originally had specified the amount of windows that should be on the street-facing sides of a house. And we've been asked to take that off, and we did.
Do you agree with that or no?
So there are instances in which we have seen egregious examples, but you are a sort of small enough, friendly enough community that I think the message would be transmitted to the applicant if the whole front face of the house was blank except for the required door. I think they would get a message somewhere along the line and probably do the right thing. Frankly, I don't think they're going to bring it in the first place. Windows are only required on houses for ingress and egress in bedrooms. Otherwise, without the fire code, there isn't really any other absolute requirement. So you could get something really weird, but until you do, it's fine to remove that requirement. And I don't think you're going to get egregiously bad examples. Yeah. We did keep it for commercial development because, of course, on commercial development, you have lots of people who think only about the inside of a store, only about the inside of an office, and not at all about how it feels from the outside. Right. So we have kept it for those, and I do believe that's important.
Okay. Suzanne?
Well, you really scared me there, Lee, because it never occurred to me that someone would not put windows in the front of their house. But I often notice that new construction, there are very few windows because they cost money.
It's actually,
And they're mostly on the sides.
yeah, it's often not quite so much about the total amount of money as it is about things like the energy code and other things that are driving people to have less, square footage of glass, because it does have to be higher quality now than it once did, and therefore is more expensive. But I don't know. This is one, you know what the tool is. If you get one bad example, you can put the tool back in place. It is in the ordinance. It's already defined. You can just add the percentages back in and you would have this tool. I think it's in the interest of continuing to make single family infill development relatively straightforward. I think it's appropriate not to include this standard for now.
Great. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Okay, Lee, well, thank you very much for your help explaining it. I'm
great to see you guys again.
Happy to see you again.
I'm actually going to suggest, Lee, if you'd like to sign out, that's no problem, but we're going to talk about the zoning map next. So if you, it might be.
I am glad to make my picture disappear and mute myself and just listen.
Yeah, but you can jump in at any time if you have something to add, because this is part of the whole kit and caboodle. I know we just had a kind of a long conversation and it was, I think, really productive. I'm so glad that you came, Lee, but I'm going to just present some short things to you. So I don't.
Go for it. I'll stay and I'll mute myself.
The next topic is that I want to discuss with you is the proposed zoning map is the urban growth boundary. And I'm going to share my screen, and this isn't going to be long. I just wanted to, I do still need to meet with staff and kind of think about this more. But I'm just going to try to jump in. Where's my share screen? And which screen am I sharing? I did a horrible job of succinctly explaining this to Rich the other day, so I'm going to try to do better.
Well, it's nice that I called you out on it, though, Heather, right?
I know. I was like, he's right.
So if you're going to tell this to the board, you need to do a succinct job.
You're very direct. I appreciate that.
I was as direct as I could be.
But is this what you're seeing? And this is all you're seeing, right? You're not
just
seeing
a Word document. Yep.
Okay, good. Not all the like unicorn pictures.
No.
So we have an urban growth boundary in Concord. So what is an urban growth boundary? I just came up with a few bullet points first for what urban growth boundaries are used for across the United States and in other countries. The main intent that they were developed for was to limit sprawl and protect natural resources. It also helps to promote growth in the areas where you already have infrastructure, and that's where you want to put your density. It helps to plan for existing infrastructure needs and to plan for future development. With that, I'm talking about water, sewer, transportation, maybe even recreation to some degree. It also can help be used as a planning tool to promote or support other community goals and policies. And by that, I mean to promote coordinated development across other disciplines. So it's this planning tool where you can see the urban growth boundary, and that means a certain thing, and that may help you to inform other aspects of your planning. In Concord, we have the urban growth boundary is a layer on the zoning map. It is not part of the zoning ordinance. It's referenced in the zoning ordinance, the site plan regulations, and the subdivision regulations. However, there is no purpose statement or definition in any of those documents. So none of the documents say, this is the urban growth boundary, this is how it's defined. Which makes it kind of vague about why it's there and what the intents of it are. I will tell you that in Concord, it's utilized for mostly for general services in terms of infrastructure, water and sewer capacity. And that's what they use to sort of understand what the needs are and what they need to plan for. I do have a meeting with general services staff on Friday to talk more about this and to understand more how they use it and how what it means for them. In our urban growth boundary, basically the definition, if there was one, is essentially everything that's not zoned RO. And that's not an absolute rule because there's definitely some RO included in there. And there's some areas where the RO where there's other districts that are not included in there. So it's unclear, since we don't know the entire history of all these things, why that's the case. It may be that certain things were rezoned, but the urban growth boundary was never adjusted. I'm not sure about the other areas where they've got some RO included in there. So some of the issues, so that's just in a nutshell, urban growth boundary in Concord. So some of the issues that I've noticed with our urban growth boundary, does anybody know what the urban growth boundary looks like in Concord? Let me,
It's a raggedy, jagged line that doesn't make
yeah,
any
it's a
sense.
crazy line.
Yeah.
So I'll just go over the last few points before I bring it up. We've got a lot of split zones because of, not necessarily because of the urban growth boundary, but because of how resources have been protected in the past. I was talking to Carlos about this the other day, and he thought that it may be the case that some of those areas were zoned RO and put out of the urban growth boundary because there did not yet exist the shoreline protection from the state at the state level. And so the city had developed these shoreline protection standards because maybe the state didn't have them yet, because they're duplicated. Essentially, the state and the city's standards are duplicated at this point. So we do have a lot of split zones though, because of the way the RO zoning was used to limit development. So you may have a lot where the front portion is completely zoned differently than the back portion, because the back portion backs up, it might be like 100-foot wide strip of RO zone, which could pose a problem. For instance, if you're trying to, if you have a business and you want to, you want to use like a little bit extra space, whatever, 10 or 20 or 15 feet, you'd have to, there's a lot of other things that you have to do, like variances or whatever, to be able to use that space, which in accordance with the state, maybe you can disturb 50% of it. But you, according to the way we have it zoned, you wouldn't be able to do anything at all because it's zoned RO. So those are some things that we're trying to fix, those little strips along the river, and instead rely on the state shoreline protection standards and not relying on split zoning to regulate development. Because technically you think a zoning district tells you what you can do. You don't necessarily think it's to prevent you from doing anything, which a lot of that RO zoned land is essentially trying to prevent you from being able to do anything that would normally be allowed in your, in your district that your road fronts on. So our urban growth boundary, as you will see in a moment, difficult to visualize and comprehend. Oh, it gives a disjointed impression for other planning purposes. So this is what I was talking about, promoting coordinated development and using it as a tool to develop or understand other policies or regulations pertaining to maybe transportation is the main one I can think of, or trail development or interconnectivity with regard to alternative transportation. So our urban growth boundary needs to be updated for sure because of the incongruity between some of the districts that have been rezoned and where the lines are. There are some things that, and also because of some of the split zones that are just don't really need to be there now because we do have the shoreline protection districts at the state level. We also need to add a definition or purpose statement. So that's something that I'm proposing, that I would like to propose in the new site plan and subdivision regulations. And that's why I'm starting this conversation with you, to talk about why do we have the urban growth boundary, how does it function, and what else can we use it for, and how can it be improved so that it can function in more ways than just telling you where you're required to put sewer and water. So I'm gonna now share, I'm gonna take a breath. Okay, now I'm gonna share a different screen. So where is the, I'm probably looking at my face all up close. So Sam made these for me like an hour ago. Thank you, Sam. So this screen is showing what our existing urban growth boundary looks like. It's basically everything that's not RO. So when you look at this crazy shape, it seems like it's just sort of odd, and you're not really, it makes Concord look like it's basically two strips and then nothing in the middle. So, and a lot of what you're seeing is just the very sort of disjointed, split zones. Like all these parcels sort of along these boundaries are actually split, or a lot of them that aren't right directly up against the river are all split zone parcels. So this is what, looking at this, it's just sort of hard to think of this is the city of Concord because it looks very sort of disjointed and crazy. It took me kind of a long time of staring at it to even understand it myself. So the other proposal, or what we've been working on, is creating basically an outline. So when you look at this, maybe I can make it a little. I'm clicking the wrong button. I'm trying to so you can see the whole thing. Is that clear?
Yep.
Now this is a little bit confusing as well because we have the highways going through that are also in red. But if you sort of imagine this red line not being there, you basically see this one outline and you'd say, oh, there's the developed area of the city of Concord. And so when it's possible that this would be a more functional tool in talking about transportation or trails or the interconnectivity of the city or how we connect different parts of the city. So this is kind of, and it's also more intelligible. You look at it and it's a shape that makes sense and you can start to think and use it for talking about development in other ways. So this is what I'm hoping to do with it. My question is, how does this affect general services and the way they use it for infrastructure? Does it affect them? Can we write it in a way that it can be used to function in both ways, to accomplish both purposes? I'm going to stop talking now and stop sharing. You're on mute, Rich.
Yeah, so sorry for that. I was coughing. So on the screen where you showed the red boundary all the way around, so I noticed on your bullet points it said that within the urban growth boundary, any development is going to require the city to extend water and sewer at the city's expense?
No, even right now, the onus is on the property owner to extend water and sewer. So right now, the way the urban growth, and this is what I was talking about, can we define it, change the way we relate to it? So right now, the way that the regulations refer to the urban growth boundary is basically in the context of sewer and water infrastructure. So if you are within the urban growth boundary and you are within a certain distance of existing facilities, you are required to extend them. Okay. So if you don't want to extend them, you've got to go get a variance, which I'm not sure was ever really the intent of the way those things were written, because they are in the site plan and subdivision regulations that you can get a waiver to do that stuff. So where the variance comes from is that in the purpose statement of the residential districts, it says the purpose of this district is to provide for sewer and water and different types of housing. And so that has been used to say, well, the purpose statement says it's to provide sewer and water, so you're required to provide it, and you need to get a variance if you're not going to provide it. So I haven't really agreed with that, because what if you're on the outskirts, like you're like basically on the boundary of the urban growth boundary and you don't want sewer and water? Like, why are we requiring you to extend out there if we don't even want you to go any further than that either? Mm-hmm. So right now, those are some little bit of quirks about how the urban growth boundary is functioning.
So does it tie into what we're trying to do with the new form-based code, as far as the new code and rolling in the new code, as well as updating and rolling in the urban growth boundary kind of statements and the kind of clarity around what it does and how we use it?
Yeah, well, I think that's why I'm talking to you. I don't think it's necessarily related to trying to make development easier for people or harder or anything like that. It's just more about changing the way that we're looking at the city and the way we're thinking about the city and the developed areas. To me, all of those areas in Concord that are natural resource areas along the river and the parks and things like that, they're part of the city. They're part of even the urban part of the city, and we want to have access to them. And in some cases, there may be challenges with getting that access because of this perception of the RO district and what you're not allowed to do there and the urban growth boundary. I mean, I think there are areas of, like, for instance, the arena that are RO zoned. And so I know people had different ideas of stuff they want to do on that property. And because of that split zoning and the RO zoning, it's like, well, you're not allowed to do anything there. Which is that really appropriate? I mean, it's right next to downtown. It's in the center of the city. We have the river there. So those are just some examples of how this concept of the urban growth boundary and being inside it or outside of it can kind of just chop up the city, because we have huge swaths of the city that are outside the urban growth boundary that we, you know, definitely want to be able to think of as more integrated, I think.
Yeah. Suzanne?
So I was here in the days of Randy Raymond and Doug Woodward.
Holy cow.
Holy cow, I'm that old. I've been here that long. I got to get off planning board. It's been too long. Anyway, I go way, way back. And I think you're totally right, Heather. I think the response was to kind of control sprawl. Because when I first moved to East Concord, it's very different than it is now. And so there's a lot more development, but I think there are areas that are within walking distance of downtown that are cornfields. And I've always liked telling people that, you know, we have cornfields within, you know, walking distance of the Capitol. So, I mean, there's a certain sense of like protection, but planned development. So I think that the line of the urban growth boundary was a little circuitous and crazy, but I think it was based on what was there. And the intent was that not to bring water and sewer, you know, all the way down Oak Hill Road or all the way down District 5 Road or whatever. But, you know, one of the other weird zones that they have is the Opportunity Corridor, which I think still exists, which is more of an overlay on top of the zoning, which kind of relates to the urban growth boundary. So I guess I would be very thoughtful of like, what does it really mean? I mean, what does it really mean when we start expanding the urban growth boundary? To me, it sounds like sprawl. And not.
Well, we don't want to change that outer edge at all.
Right.
Well, I thought that you were I thought that's what you showed. You just kind of connected. You made it look more. You added more to the urban growth boundary.
Well,
no, it just filled in the inside.
Yeah, the urban growth boundary is not expanding outward. So we're not.
No, but it's expanding. So the one thing that's missing on that map, and I might not see it correctly. Why don't we have the Merrimack River shown like a very defining thing?
We could. It was just the.
I think I don't think it would. I think that would be really important.
Yeah, it was just that the map was made in 15 minutes an hour ago.
Oh, is that the whole map?
Yeah. No, I mean this map that I'm showing you. This map that I'm showing you is.
I think we should. Okay, going forward, I think the Merrimack River is a very important feature. Because that defines a lot of, you know, you look at Sycamore Gardens at NHTI and you look at NHTI. And that's right on the Merrimack River.
So I think
it's part of the urban growth boundary, but we don't see the river going through it. And there's, you know, just saying.
Yeah,
I think it's important. It's as important as 93. Thank you very much.
Actually more important if you ask me in terms of looking at the growth boundaries with setbacks and how it impacts development.
Somebody have another question? I want to show you something.
Go ahead.
I don't want to stop any.
No, go ahead.
Conversation. So I think this area down here is a really good example of some of the strangeness of the urban growth boundary. So, actually, no, I want to show you it on the. Can you see this screen?
Mm-hmm.
With the zoning map? Okay.
So
this area, I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to put shoreline protection on. So this is the shoreline protection district. Over here is the parcel that just last year we rezoned.
Hang on.
We're not seeing your pointer.
Yeah, you're not seeing. We're seeing a zoning map.
PDF document. If you're trying to show your online.
I'll reshare. There? Now you can see my mouse moving around?
Yep.
With the river, Sam says. So here, this parcel right here, this was the parcel that was rezoned last year, and we showed you that concept plan for in the grocery store and the multifamily housing.
So exit 13 right on Manchester.
The Manchester Street. Does
Yeah.
anybody remember that?
The old,
Okay.
it's the old drive-in.
So they
The old
were,
drive-in, yeah.
yeah, yes, the old drive-in theater. So this is showing the rezone situation. They had to come in and get this area rezoned to gateway performance because this is where the line was. So this was zoned RO. So if you were to look at the urban growth boundary, it went right through the center of this site. So the current urban growth boundary is actually shown right here, right through here, through the center of the site. And this was all zoned RO. So they came in, well, the reason it was zoned RO was because there's these resources here, and it was just sort of assumed, I guess, that this was, well, there was like floodplain, but of course that was according to 1969 data. But this area here is actually buildable. And if you look at their concept plan, it basically is right here, okay? And this area zoned here that they had cut off here, this is all wetlands. This was the only area of this parcel that was gateway performance, and it's all wetlands. They can't develop there. So when they created these districts, they weren't looking really, really closely at what is and wasn't buildable. So they had to come in and get a zoning change to change this all the way to gateway performance. And you'll notice, so we didn't go all the way through here and change the whole thing, but you see this strip? This is an RO strip that you will find all up and down the river. So we didn't bother to rezone this at that time because they weren't going to use it. It was shoreline protection and there was no need for it. But this just goes to show the oddness of the way the RO district was used. They couldn't build it before. They can't build it now. They couldn't build it even if it was zoned in a way that seemed more logical. But if you look over here at the OCP, so the OCP is this, all of this, right? So you've got OCP all the way up to the river, and this is kind of a redevelopment area. Well, still, you've got a lot of developments in Shoreline Protection District. So the logic of why one is, one way and one is the other way isn't really there. So I would suggest that you just allow this whole area to be what it is, that this would all be gateway performance, and they're not going to be able to use this. It's either wetlands or it's shoreline protection, or they have to go through other state processes to get some kind of approval to build there. So it's just easier for the property owner if they don't have all these split zones and weirdness to contend with. The same way that these folks do over here.
Well, except that, Heather, like that, all those 8, so that's where the Cohen recycling place is.
Yeah.
All those buildings were there before they had the shoreline protection stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah. So if those regulations cannot transfer to future development.
What do you mean?
Like you can't, if someone were to buy that, they should not be able to rebuild in those areas, right?
Right.
Okay.
They're existing nonconformities.
Right.
So right here, what I'm showing you in this little blue line, there's a 75-foot non-disturbed requirement with the state. Okay, so according to the state, you cannot disturb this 75 feet no matter what. You'll notice over here, that's exactly what this is. This is that 75 feet. Staff made a 75-foot strip. That's the state's undisturbed and the city's undisturbed area. Whether it was zoned RO or not, in accordance with the city, you can't disturb that either. So even if you somehow got permission by the state, you wouldn't have permission from the city, regardless of the zone. And then you've got after the 75 foot, you've got a 150-foot buffer that you are allowed to disturb 50% of that area, in accordance with with the use that is approved. So down here, they're allowed to disturb 50% of this area with the allowed use. Over here, the way that it was zoned before, they still could allow, disturbance 50% with the allowed use. And then the 250-foot buffer, which I think this must be showing.
Well, Heather, I mean, honestly, in that example that you're showing, it's of course you would do that because you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can't develop here, but you've got all the development on Manchester Street. That makes sense. And that's where the old drive-in was. I guess my concern is that you really have to look at it because whenever we do a rezoning, you look at these weird little parcels that are just boxed in that don't make any sense. So I think it makes total sense to review on a case-to-case basis. But I think we just want to be careful that we have the development within the place where the resources are.
Yeah.
And
Well, I don't,
so I mean, when I first looked at it, I'm like, you know, what is the goal is to like get rid of all those crazy little spaces that don't make sense.
right. Well, from the perspective of the RO and the zoning, yes. With the urban growth boundary, I think it's more about just being able to see the city as a whole. So we wouldn't change, for instance, you know, some of these larger areas that are I can't see any. Hold on, I don't need to make you seasick here.
Well, I guess the urban growth boundary is trying to keep the urban growth within a boundary that doesn't keep expanding.
So we wouldn't rezone this area. It would stay RO. So the uses that you're allowed to do would not change in any of the farms, or I'm not suggesting getting rid of all the RO zones within the city, but keeping those RO zones and cleaning up the parcels that are split zoned or don't necessarily make any sense to be the way that they are. It's just, you would not be required to extend water or sewer into those areas. So we'd have to write it in a way that said that you were not required to, because we're not trying, I'm not sure why we're requiring people to do water and sewer at this point. I really want to talk to General Services about that. I understand you want to extend that infrastructure to build out where you have your capacity. But honestly, a lot of the areas where we don't have it are so far out now. They're all on the outskirts of the urban growth boundary. And what if we don't get there? Maybe it was too big to begin with. People don't need it out there. I went off on a tangent, but my point was, we're not suggesting to rezone these areas that are large areas that are zoned that way for a purpose, like the farms. None of those parcels. I'm not suggesting rezoning any of those, only the little scrappy split zone ones that aren't necessarily used for anything except, duplicating state standards for resource protection.
Okay. Any other questions or anything else, Heather?
This is just, I know this is a complicated topic, but I hope you get engaged. I would love feedback. Suzanne, I'd love to continue the conversation. Others, I would love to talk more. I'm going to come back with this in the next few months to continue the conversation and let you know what happens after I talk with General Services and other staff. But yeah, it's a planning tool. We're not trying to change the function or the size, but we're trying to change the perception of it and of the city and be able to use it as more of a planning tool for other purposes. Maybe we refer to the urban growth boundary in the transportation section, and add different stuff in there, and it can be a different type of tool and a more functional tool.
I was going to say a more efficient, more functional tool as opposed to just an overlay district that nobody knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. So that is number 11 on our agenda, right?
Yes, and now I would like, Lee, you did not say anything.
I really didn't have anything to offer. That was a great explanation of the challenges. I think people don't understand necessarily the split zoning. So if you present this again to a broader public, I think you need to show off some of those split zoned lots and show the impact the way you described it for the Gateway Performance site. That was a perfect example. But other than that, I think it's great.
Yeah, I paid him to be here just to give me compliments.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lee. I will talk to you soon if you would like to.
Thank you, Lee.
Regain your email.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to have my inauguration drink tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Night.
Excellent. Have a
Okay, good
evening.
night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
we need to get to that.
Yes. So
All you have left
anything
is
else, Heather, on our agenda?
Just the election of officers, but Carol is not here. I thought I would send her an email and say, can we nominate you for vice president? Or vice chair? Do you still want to be? I don't know.
I guess that's what happens when you don't show up.
Either that or
I suppose if she doesn't want it, she can always resign, right? She's really good.
Let's give it all to her.
Yeah.
She's really good at it, though.
Who wants to be the chair?
You. You. I nominate you.
Rich. Yeah, I know. I second the nomination of Rich.
I nominate you, Richard.
Yep, and I seconded it, so we can vote on it.
I can. My comment would be that to develop a chair takes some time, and by the time you get enough experience to really be an effective chair, you want to get off. No, not happening.
Oh, so I think Rich, you're doing a fantastic job.
I do too.
Appreciate
Me
the way
too.
you run the meetings.
Thank you.
Thumbs up.
Absolutely.
I like working for you.
Okay. Well, I will.
I don't know if you can preside over your own roll call.
I can't. I was just going to say, I don't know who can preside. I don't know if you can or not, but I can't ask for a vote. So.
I will ask for a roll call.
I think John Egan should do that.
John
You want me to do the roll call?
Yeah, no, it's a nomination process.
Well, you did the nomination, Matt.
And we can blame it on you.
Matt seconded. I'll
And,
nominate
so
Rich
I'll-
too.
I'll
It's
do-
okay.
I'll do all in favor. Counselor Pierce,
Aye.
Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Member Regan,
A resounding aye.
Member Fox,
A resounding aye also.
Member Hicks,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger.
I'm on mute. Can you hear me?
You're
we
good.
can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. I kept thinking I couldn't get off mute.
You voted nay, right?
You're good. You saw the thumbs up and we heard her.
I was
We
thumbs
want this
up, not
unanimous.
down.
Member Smithmeyer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Unanimously
Thank
in favor.
you for the resounding vote. I appreciate it.
And
So should we do Carol, or you want to hang on to Carol? We'll do her next month.
No, just do her. Just say she's going to be it.
She can resign.
that's right. She can if she wants.
can
if
resign.
doesn't want it.
No,
Let's get
I'll
it
second
done.
Suzanne's nomination of Carol for vice chair.
Yeah,
Second.
No, I seconded it. Suzanne made the nomination.
I made the nomination.
Oh, okay.
but you could be the Member Fox,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Aye.
Chairman Woodfin,
Aye.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes. Aye.
Member Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Member Rosenberger,
Aye.
Member Hicks,
Aye.
and Member Smithmeyer.
Aye.
Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda, right? So you're stuck with me for another year.
Yeah.
So, Rich, if these meetings go until like 11 o'clock this year, then
Yeah.
you're out.
Then you're
I
out.
know.
huh?
Keep it.
Okay.
Yeah, you're doing a good job, Rich.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope we get short ones like this one, but I think we're going to start to see some agendas, some long agendas. So get ready.
Oh, God.
Lots of development, lots of good stuff coming up.
We're trying to work through the issues to make it as simple as possible.
Thank you, Heather.
Good job, Heather.
You won't have chickens to kick around. I don't
Oh, yeah. Thanks,
Thank
Earl.
goodness.
Council vote.
Thanks, Earl. Thanks for that.
I think the chairman has missed his opportunity to give the crew a pep talk. I'll just say, this is your opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I don't know, Byron. I miss having you here. I love Earl, though. So you're welcome to come every now and then. But I like
I
seeing
feel
Earl's
like, I feel
smiling
like
face.
Casper the Friendly Ghost here.
You popping in and popping out.
Yeah, Byron, I thought you didn't like us anymore.
I just like to come and see what Earl's background's going to be. It's different every week.
I
That's
love you
always
all, but
enjoyable.
I mean, we enjoy having Earl on the city council so much. We really want to share the love,
That is true.
as the mayor says.
That is true.
Initiation by fire, Earl, is what it is.
Initiation by fire. See, I've got a virtual background. I wanted to put it on like this. Hang on. Uh-oh. So there I am. I'm overseeing my flock, but I don't want it to be like that. Instead,
The angel of light.
it's like this
The
one.
angel of light.
Okay, so that's
I'm
all.
just going to remind you at this point that Concord
Look at
TV
Earl.
is still
Wow.
rolling.
Look at
Who
Earl.
is that masked man?
Who is that?
I'm
You know,
incognito.
I don't know how you guys figure that stuff out. That's hysterical.
Me either.
So
Yeah.
we will keep politics out of this, but 2021 is going to be a great banner year for getting rid of COVID and getting back to meeting at the
Yes.
city council chambers. I miss those uncomfortable chairs at the council chambers, so I'm looking forward to sitting there again and seeing everyone in person. Hopefully we get around the corner here and we can get back to normal this year.
Here, here.
Here, here, Rich.
Okay, so with
You
that,
need Biden's speechwriter. You need Biden's
Looks like
speechwriter.
Earl's going to France.
yeah, Earl is going to France.
Oui.
Got the Eiffel Tower behind him. That's all he needs.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, it's only.
I make a
go ahead,
motion to
Matt.
adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
I was
Second.
gonna say we'll get a motion to adjourn. We got a roundly second. So all those in favor with a hand.
Aye. Aye.
Everybody's out. So
Bye.
we are out. This closes up the January
Oh, hi,
meeting.
Lisa.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Bye-bye,
Thank
gang.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, folks. Great
Bye.
job tonight.